welcome everybody, and again, thank you all for participating in the series of workshops that we're having with Lorie Vincent from Acceleration by Design. Tonight's the seventh, of the several workshops that she's bringing to the community. I know you all know that, so I'm kind of mostly talking to the camera. Tonight we're going to be talking about workforce. Lorie's here because of the City of Smithville and the Smithville Workforce Training Center have partnered together to make sure that she comes and helps us out with all of the information that we'll be needing as we enter into comprehensive planning and strategic planning and understanding what we want to do, what kinds of things we want to learn about so that we know which directions we want to go as we move into the future. So Lori, thank you very much.
I am so excited to talk about this topic. It's very near and dear to my economic development heart. And as always, I know many of you have heard my spiel before. The whole purpose and what we were doing with the city and the Workforce Center was to use this time, 9 or 10 months or whatever, to talk about this array of topics, because economic development isn't just one thing. It's the successful implementation of several things, and it's tricky trying to get them all in tandem and going in the right direction and the same direction all at the right time. But they're all critical, and at least to the sustainability and the economic growth of a community. So some things may feel like, oh, we're doing really good at this and we need to be working on this. That is absolutely going to happen all the time. You're going to feel like you're juggling a lot of things or we're wearing a lot of hats. And the best thing that I can say about that is no one person, no one group does economic development by themselves. It's all about creating relationships and creating strategic partnerships with a lot of different groups in the community or in the region to achieve your objectives. So what I'm going to do tonight is as always, I'm going to throw out topics that we're going to talk about. My goal is to give you things to think about and to maybe open your eyes to a new perspective, or to go, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way, or I had no idea about that. For example, we talked about some housing last time, and so uploading a lot of case studies about a lot of the housing that ideas that we talked about last time. So we're not doing strategic planning right now. We're really educating ourselves and learning from each other about the direction that perhaps either assessing where we are right now or talking about the direction you would like to go, because that's all going to be critical information for the City Council, for Economic Development Committee, for the Chamber, for the Workforce Center, all of you all who are stakeholders in the economic prosperity and sustainability of your community. We all want to be on the same page moving forward. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to talk about the importance of workforce and talent development. Two different things. A lot of people will go, well, that sounds like the same thing. Well, workforce is your workforce. It is your labor base that you have right now. And, or perhaps a workforce that you're trying to recruit. But talent development is developing strategies and initiatives that will actually pipeline people with specific skills for specific industries. That is talent development. A completely different set of initiatives than perhaps things you might do under business retention and expansion or upskilling, or things that are kind of probably more industry specific. Talent development can be an array of things, and we're going to talk about that. But these are the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. Traditional job recruitment, speculative job skills development. And I'll upload this, Janice, so you guys don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes. Well,
I like taking notes.
I know. All you with your notepads. Identifying current job needs. And you all pipe in, because a lot of this is being done already, and you can catch us up. Also, Steph gave me an update on the grant, on the status of the grant due as well. Targeted marketing for specific job needs, creating a pipeline to support existing needs, creating a pipeline to support potential needs, creating an environment of healthy business development and entrepreneurship, and resources and action items. So just like we did with retail, with housing, with banking funding, with telling your story, these are all involved in workforce. So just as when people go, we need to do more marketing, well, let's talk about the 20 different kinds of marketing you can do. Or you might say, our community needs more housing. Well, obviously we talked about 17 different types of housing last time. There's so many different things that go underneath this umbrella. So the workforce and talent development is like it's the view from above. And we'll drill down and talk about what these different things mean. Let's talk about the stakeholders real quick. All of the people who would be involved in the decision making and the creation of initiatives moving forward. Current employers, current employees. Two different things. Prospective employers, potential employees, skilled labor, unskilled labor, potential entrepreneurs. The Workforce Training Center, which you'll hear me say this a million times, gives you a huge competitive advantage. Huge competitive advantage over other communities. 3 and 4 times your size. It's amazing that you have one. That's so awesome. So that needs to be part of your story for sure. Definitely gives you an advantage. High skill career programs and VOAG training, which we all learned a lot of our skills in high school in vocational training, right? And then they took it out of the schools. And then we had this huge vacuum of people not learning common sense life skills. When they took home ec and VOAG training out of the schools, we're starting to see it come back in. But it's taken a whole generation almost to learn of what a gap it left when they took those out. Same with extracurricular, band, choir, things like that really produce well-rounded students. I'm very excited now. We're starting to see schools fund those programs again. Now they look different and they're more modern, obviously, and it shouldn't take away from basic education, the reading, the writing, all of those things as well. But I think now people realize our workforce doesn't start when you're 21. It really starts when you're way younger. And these days, it doesn't stop when you're 65 either. And a lot of people are working longer, and perhaps they may retire and still want to work, and they learn a whole new skill. Well, where are they going to learn that? So we really have to keep our mind open about who all are stakeholders in what we're doing. As young as probably 14 and 15, and maybe as old as 70, that people are still learning new skills. Universities and community colleges, which you have great proximity to, and then SBDCs, incubators, worker space, and non-traditional work programs. We'll talk about some of those as well. So, any other stakeholders that are
Define SBDC.
Oh, the Small Business Development Centers. Okay, sorry. I try not to use acronyms, but that's one that. Small Business Development Center. Can we talk about where was the closest one to you?
Bastrop. Right?
Where?
Isn't there
I
one in
thought it was San Marcos.
Yeah, I think we talked about San Marcos.
But the guy that just hired in Bastrop just came from an SBDC out of Houston. That's what it was.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Real familiar with those.
I think we talked about this maybe one time before. I think we talked about it in our banking meeting, but the SBDCs, we are already paying for that. And they offer an abundance of services that are free either for us to use or for your clients to use. And so in economic development, if somebody is interested in starting a new business, or you're part of maybe the chambers, and it's like, I want to start a new business. It's not really up to us to pick winners and losers, right? Or to say, okay, well, we like you, so we're going to help you, but we're not going to help you. But what the SBDC does is they will walk that person, that group, that investment group, that individual, doesn't matter, but walk them through the whole process of financing, marketing, all hidden cost, competitors. They walk them through a whole process before they get started. And banks will require that now. So no bank's gonna give a loan with somebody who doesn't have a business plan, and they will take them through the whole process. So I just say, man, take advantage of having that third party that we're already paying for through our tax dollars. It's a federal program, and use the SBDCs all you can. Some are better than others, some are more engaged than others, but definitely take advantage of that. And they also offer a lot of free training programs where they would come and perhaps do a 1 or 2 hour program on different computer programs, or they work with community colleges to do business training as well. So just take advantage of the SBDCs. That's my only little teeny tiny commercial for them. So I'm a big believer in incubators and the worker space and other things as well. So let me give you a little bit of perspective from an economic development standpoint. So I started in economic development in 1990. 32 years ago, 33 years ago, oh my goodness. So I started in 1990. And this was the priority of people who were looking to cite new businesses, new industry, new plants, new manufacturing, whatever it might be. These were the questions we would get at trade shows or from prospects or initial meetings. They would say, do you have any industrial parks? And you have to remember, this is before the economic development sales tax. This is back when industrial foundations and utility companies were really the big drivers of economic development back in the day. And so prospects would say, do you have industrial parks? And back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is when a lot of industrial parks were built by industrial foundations. But if you remember, industrial foundations are member-driven or stockholder-driven, or basically investment groups that would go out and buy and develop land. So a lot of communities do have industrial parks that are literally 50, 60 years old now. Some have been maintained, some have not been. Some were purchased and never developed. There's a whole array of it, but that's what people were looking for then, in this order. Industrial parks, then do you have any industrial parks? And the community would say yes or no. And so you were probably on the list or off the list almost immediately based on that. The second thing was, and do you have any incentives? And incentives were starting to be a new thing back then, because really in the 70s and 80s, the incentives might have been under the table type stuff. It wasn't a public, I'm asking the city for, help on something that you're going to be very transparent about, or the county, I want a road, I want, sewer service or something like that. So incentives were starting to become part of the deal. And why this happened is because people were really starting to figure out that, starting to make this a very competitive game. And instead of just all the urban areas getting all the economic development and the rural areas getting agriculture and other, I would say mostly ag-based projects, a lot of communities started going, hey, wait a minute, I'm only 30 miles from that city. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. So maybe we should build an industrial park. And they started throwing money out, and money per job or whatever, and incentives became a big deal. We made it hard because the smaller communities could not. It was a very uneven playing field. But what a lot of them did was say, you know what, I'm going to build a really great industrial park, and we're going to get in the game. And then location was a big deal. So this is what prospects were asking for in the 1990s. Industrial parks, incentives, and location. And so people getting into the economic development industry were focusing on that. Then about 1998, and I remember this because I keep very good records. I think I've told you about my research projects. Keep very good records about this. When we started going to trade shows in about 1997, 98, it was before the end of the year, in the end of the 1990s. Incentives became the number one thing. It was a horrible time for economic development because there were so many red flags, so many bad deals done. We had just gotten the economic development sales tax, and maybe 200 or 300 cities in Texas had passed it, and we're starting to accumulate kind of a war chest. So then cities who didn't have it were, getting money from other places. It was a messy time. I mean, if you kind of think about our economy then, pretty messy, kind of just overall at this time. Incentives became the number one thing, existing sites and infrastructure. So the list in just 8 years' time completely changed. And it's not on here. Workforce. Nobody asked about it, nobody talked about it. And so we were all focused on these real tangible things. In about 2005, available land and sites became the number one thing that they were asking for. Then they were looking for not incentives, but capital funding became a very big deal. And then they finally started asking about what kind of labor do you have. But it was the third thing. And then incentives. So the good news was incentives got bumped down. Labor got on the list. But this was hard because all of a sudden now you had prospects that said, we want available land and sites, which meant all the economic developers had to go and identify. Like a prospect, if they came to town and you didn't go, we have site number 1, number 2, number 3, if you weren't ready for that, you were out. And this was back in 2005. So in just one decade's time, from 2005 to 2015, workforce availability shot up to number 1. I mean, literally shot up. Now I worked for a regional economic development group that covered 69 counties, and we did 6 or 8 trade shows a year. And then after that, I worked for Team Texas, and we did 6 or 8 shows a year. And it literally, nobody even cared about these other things if you didn't have that. Workforce availability became number 1. Then existing business parks and incentives got back on the list, and they were wanting existing business parks. So that should have told us then. We had this premonition really in 2015, around that time, that all of a sudden, because remember, this is before you could show a virtual building, we didn't have all those digital tools to say, well, we have this piece of land and we can we can show you what this virtual building would look like on it, which that's how we do it now. But back then, they started getting in a hurry, and it was very, very competitive. And so all of a sudden, if you happen to be a community that still had those programs in school, and you could produce welders, you were shooting up to number 1, because welders were the number 1 job skill starting in 2015. Still is today, right up there at the top. But no, people were starting to get in a hurry. And so after years of these years of people building spec buildings and then sitting on them because they were building maybe the wrong kind of building, now that existing people were just getting a hurry and go, well, if you don't have something ready for me, if you don't have a building already up that can be adapted for what I need, especially in your industrial park or your business park, then I'm out. I'm going to go down the road because somebody else will have it. And think about this, in Texas, we have over 5,000 cities in Texas. So your competition is not just in Texas, obviously, but just imagine the competition you have in Texas alone, much less all of the other states. So a lot of prospects now will come in and they'll say, I really want to be, depending on what they do, could be any kind of industry, but perhaps they say I got to be by a port. I got to be close to a port. Years ago, we would have thought, well, that meant they got to be along the Gulf, maybe in the South, or the East Coast or the West Coast. That's it. Well, now we have so many inland ports that added 200 cities as your competition, because now we have fully developed inland ports, all off of the Great Lakes, all coming into the Gulf, going up the Mississippi River. So now everything is just so much more sophisticated, moving so much faster, and your competition is so much fierce. You do have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself. And you have done that by making workforce a priority, because obviously it's a priority to them. But now, in 2023, they've taken it a step further, and now not only do they want workforce, they want a skilled workforce. So it continues to change. They want dependable pipelines. So even if you said, now, and this happens a lot, where a community, maybe they had a plant closure or a large business closure, an industry, because of the economy, through no fault of their own or whatever, and this community finds themselves with an unexpected pool of labor. Then all of a sudden, the bat light goes on, and these companies go, oh, I wasn't thinking about going there, but there is a pool of people with 70% of the skills that we need, and we can teach the other 30%. That is how fast things move these days. When we had a lot of military base closures, a lot of companies were going, oh, hey, there's some really good skills there. Maybe I wasn't thinking about locating there, but now I am. And in economic development, we have to be so nimble and so fast to constantly be evaluating what you have, what you could get, and what's going on around you. Because now they're looking for skilled workforce, the dependable pipeline, because say they're able to hire this group of people, but you have no other programs going on that would support an ongoing workforce, and somebody else has a pool of labor, but they have a really great pipeline from their community college or from their high school, or some sort of training that's going to provide them the skills they need. All of a sudden, all things being considered equal, you're going to lose it for the lack of the pipeline. Pipeline is so important. Now, quality of life made it to the list for the first time in my career. And I've asked others older than me, was quality of life ever on the, one of the first things? And nothing has changed in the 30 years I've been doing economic development. Quality of life is a deciding factor way down the road. It is a deciding factor. If they come up and they go, oh, we could do this or we could do this, and you meet the criteria on 10 things, and they have 2 or 3, 4 communities that meet all of the criteria, and that's not hard to do. Well, it is kind of hard to do, but not unusual that they would have a handful. They go, okay, out of all of these now, you know what question they're going to ask? Where do my workers want to live? What is their age? Do they have young families? Is school going to make a difference? If it's an older client, maybe an older workforce, maybe that's not as important. Maybe they want to be close to medical services. Is all of those things, that's when quality of life comes into play. Quality of life really should be a focus for your citizens, for your community, and for tourism, and for your existing businesses. But it's not going to be, people aren't going to move their business here just because of that. All of the other things have to work first. They have to be able to get the workforce they need. They got to be able to have the housing. They've got to be able to have the transportation. All of those other tangible economic development things have to take place first. And then they still want available sites.
What other characteristics do they use to evaluate quality of life?
Well, the basic necessities are housing, education, medical, and broadband, or connectivity. So those are the first 4 things they're going to look for. And then beyond that, then you start getting into a vibrant downtown and business climate. Are there vibrant small businesses? Is there tourism? Are there, this younger generation, they really love, especially the work from home or the remote workers, they love the outdoors. They want to go where there's hiking trails where they can ride their bikes, where to a time zone where they can get off work and go spend another 4 or 5 hours doing what they want. And so those are kind of just
No,
the
I know.
main things, but
We have some areas of opportunity we need to work
you
on.
definitely have areas of opportunity. And when we were talking about telling your stories, I was kind of listening to all the different tables talk about, because Andy and I posed some questions to the different tables about, about what do you think your story is and what you have to offer and what makes you different. And everybody was so animated, and like, you're in big trouble when you're in a room and nobody can think of anything. Instead, we were like, okay, we'll take your papers now because it's time for everybody to go, because everybody was still going, we're still writing, we're still talking. That's awesome. But talking about it amongst yourselves is one thing, and telling the world is another. And I think that's where you have a lot of opportunity to craft your story, craft your message, and get it out to the world. And that we're going to talk about what difference that makes in attracting workforce. So, traditional job recruitment, we're going to quickly go through these topics in the next 15 minutes. So, traditional job recruitment is think of it as a help wanted sign. You have a job that needs to be filled. So you say, we have a job, we need to fill it, these are the skills, this is what we're looking for, and then somebody expresses interest in that job. That's the very traditional way of job recruitment. Got an open job, put it out to the world, okay, then you accept applicants. That still happens, believe it or not. Now more and more, recruiting is happening online, on Zoom. They're doing all kinds of virtual testing. It's not the same game probably we all went through when we were first getting jobs, but there is still a lot of traditional job recruitment. It's really hard to pin down what your industries, what your local or regional industries need if you're not having that conversation and you don't have a relationship with those companies. We don't have a session on business retention expansion, or maybe we do or don't, I don't remember, but I'm a huge believer in it. And just a quick note about why business retention and expansion is so important or why having a relationship with all of your employers, big and small. For a big example of when this became so important is during COVID. That March when everything shut down, that was not the first time that a company needed to be hearing from the chamber or the EDC or the economic development or even the city for that matter. If that was the first time somebody from one of those organizations was contacting them, there was zero trust involved in a conversation where you may go to them and say, I know at that time, all of my counterparts were going to their companies going, we want to help, how can we help? Are you an essential, are you considered essential, non-essential, blah, 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 what about how do we make payroll? All those things came up. For the communities that already had a relationship with all of their employers somehow, could immediately pick up the phone and say, okay, Joe, let's talk. Okay, Mary, let's talk about what your needs are. I mean, there was no introduction, there was no we're here to help, because you already had a relationship with them. Those communities that had that, they hit the ground running, they started developing programs, and they were able to weather the storm so much faster and easier and long term than a community that did not have any initiatives in place and were just getting a list of their companies and one by one contacting them and introducing themselves for the first time. Those companies were going, I don't even know who you are. If you can figure out a way to help me, let me know, but in the meantime, I got things to worry about. That was what we were, that we were hearing from people. And they're going, I don't know what to do, or they won't talk to me. And I'm like, have you never been to a networking event? You never gone to their company before? And they were so focused on recruitment, the glamorous part of economic development, that they completely forgot that the reason their community exists is because of their existing business base. That is the backbone of your community. It doesn't do you any good to recruit 100 new jobs if you're going to lose 2 companies at 50 jobs apiece. It's a no net gain. I was going to say it's a loss, but then I did the math. It's even. start using these examples. But that just goes to show you the importance of the business retention and expansion initiatives. And anybody can do it. It can be a committee, it could be one time a year you do an appreciation event. I know everywhere that I have worked, we've implemented a way that different groups we could divide up the list and make sure somebody knew everybody. So that in times of crisis, like you don't want to be the last one to learn that or you don't want to learn from the media that a company is about to close. You want to have a close enough relationship with them that they give you a heads up. If they say, you know, the economy's not working for us anymore, our product's not in demand, we're going to consolidate somewhere else, but we wanted to give you a heads up and give you time, 3 or 4, sometimes it's just days, sometimes it's hours, but at least you know, and you're able to go, okay, then the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a job fair for next week. You can pull those together really quickly and immediately begin to figure out how am I going to take care of those employees that are about to lose their jobs. And none of that happens if you don't already have a relationship with your companies. So,
Is that on the list of topics? I mean,
I have to look at it. I think it's probably embedded in one.
I think
with
it's probably in bed. I think we talked about it at the first one.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely talk about it in the last one.
Yeah, and I think in the Downtown Renaissance, I expect that we'll cover part of it in that as well. And
Yeah.
that I think is the next time we meet in
Yeah.
August.
y'all got a ranking of the largest employers?
Oh, I've been working on it. I have one from 2017, and I've been having our intern from Home to Texas is updating that this summer. So I'm not sure exactly where she is right now with the list. She's been making phone calls the last week or so.
So making a comment there, when St. Mark's Hospital closed their doors just maybe 9 months ago, and they had to reemploy those 62 folks. There were 62 that lost their jobs in a day. Within 2 weeks, Regency, the Regency system, which is the 9 nursing homes plus Seton Hospital, most of those people got picked up in one of those jobs.
They got
Which was
absorbed.
amazing because everything happened like within 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But they laid everybody off.
Yeah.
One of the girls works at the city. She was in the, I knew her because I would go to occupational, and she was working there, and she now works for the city.
That was
So
pretty
we
bad.
picked up any slack we could.
Yeah. Well, imagine if nobody knew that was coming. You know, at least you can put some buffers in place. And even, I've even heard companies say, we're not gonna make it, we're gonna close. And told somebody that, somebody from the city, maybe they told the mayor, maybe they told the economic development person, somebody that they had a relationship with, and that person or that group was able to go, hold on, what is the problem? Is it financial? Is it labor? Is it skills? Is it marketing? What is it? Before you completely, shut the door, let's at least try to figure out. Because many, many times it's panic and it's, and it's something that could be fixed.
We had this discussion the other day about Southside Barbecue. Southside Barbecue came here, remember we went there, they got great food, but they rebranded when they came to Smithville, and they called it Smithville Barbecue. And we were talking to one of the guys that came in, because of course he's looking to now get a different trade. And we had this conversation, I would go in, and maybe they shouldn't really change the name, they already had the brand, they called it Smithville Barbecue, now they're closing their doors. Not that the food isn't any good, so I don't even know the reason. If anybody knows, please tell me, but now those employees are coming out to see us, what can they test?
When I went there, they said, we asked, why are you closing? She said, because this is how it is, there's like 3 of us in there, just no business.
No business.
One of the things
Nobody was coming in.
I've heard in the community is because it wasn't Zimmer Hansel's anymore, they weren't gonna go there. And there was something, I'd say, well, why is that? This is a business that's open. Nobody forced the Zimmer Hansels out, they just retired. There wasn't a thing that they had to go. So, there's a mindset there, we're not gonna support anybody except for our locals. And that's
Right.
something we have to change.
And then, but the rebranding something that is really popular in Elgin is Southside Bar. Everybody knows Southside Barbecue, so it's the same company that came to Smithville.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know, if that's the part of the problem was they just rebranded and no one knew it was the good food from Southside Barbecue.
Well, and Southside, they're one in Bastrop, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, they have Elgin and
Yeah.
Bastrop, and those are going from the same.
All right, well, let's quickly go through the rest of these. I'm trying to keep us on time. Speculative job recruitment, different from traditional job recruitment, is if perhaps, and I'm sure that Janice and them at some point, or Tom and them maybe have done it for you, have done a heat map to show what industries are located here or around here within a commuting radius. And if you begin to start seeing clusters of things that maybe it's not quite there yet, but you can see that you could take advantage of clusters that are beginning to happen within commuting distance, then you could begin to do speculative job recruitment, which means perhaps there's a technology company here, there's a technology company in Bastrop, there's one, or there's medical device companies, or, whatever it might be. Once you kind of do those heat maps and you see what's located within this commuting distance, then you can begin to go, wait a minute, I am going to start marketing to people who have the skills for this industry. And then it becomes a chicken and egg kind of thing, but once you start building that speculative job recruitment pipeline, then you can also market to the companies who need that. And then you can tell those companies, look, we have more and more people with the skills that you're looking for moving into our region. And it's all about marketing. I just have to keep reminding us that these things don't happen by themselves. That we think we're the center of the universe, but we're not. People don't know what they don't know, and we have to tell them. So if you begin to feel like there's starting to be a cluster, you can even create one, but usually they happen naturally. It happened in Austin. It's starting to happen in other places where you don't have to have them all located right here, within a mile of each other. But if you begin to see, wow, this hospital open here, we have our hospital here, there's one there, and they have a shortage of nurses, then what's the one thing you should focus on? Let's start putting our money towards training for nurses, and let's find out the kind of quality of life that nurses want to have, what kind of housing they can afford, and you start putting those pieces together, and then all of a sudden you start marketing to people really 16, 17, 18 interested in nursing. Consider either getting trained here, work here, or whatever. You start building that cluster. That is speculative job recruitment. And I encourage you to not just rely on traditional job recruitment, to start being a little bit open-minded about. I'm working in one community right now that has a ton of smart kids that all they do is game. They're gamers. A little bit out of my world. And so I asked them, I go, okay, what can these kids do? What can we do with these skills? Yes.
SpaceX is hiring right now.
Yes.
They love gamers.
Yeah,
And
and so's the military.
And so it's been fun to create all the marketing around this skill that these kids have. And they just thought it was just a hobby for the kids. And I was like, well, there's companies that are going to be looking for those skills. They may not be called gaming skills. They may be other more analytical type titles and skills, but let's connect those. And so, we're doing that a lot in Kentucky, because when the mines started closing, and these kids who never really worked in the mines, but their parents did, and their grandparents did, these are smart kids, but they are lost because they really don't know what to do. They really don't want to leave. They're very entrenched in their culture up there, but they're smart and they want to do something. Their world's just not very big yet. But boy, howdy can they play those games. And and they win all these the school awards, and they go to all these contests. We just have to figure out how to get that into the world,
Do
to
that.
make it a marketable skill for them. And so we are working on attracting companies that could use those skills. So anyway, think big, you guys. So identifying current job needs, the Workforce Center's probably doing that. And the Workforce Commission can also provide a lot of data. But a lot of that also needs to come directly from a conversation with companies. They will tell you stuff that data will not tell you. Because if you ask them, well, what are your needs? And they just like, oh my God, I need 15 people. Well, that's not, you need to know more than we just need 15 people. Okay, you need 15 people. Let's talk about, are they front office? Are they, back office? Is it shift work? You start asking them a series of questions so that you can begin to figure out, okay, this is what their needs are. And all 15 people may not have the same need. They're just, all they know is they're shorthanded. And they need 15 people. And when you start having that conversation with them, okay, what is it that you really do need? Then you go talk to this company and they go, oh, I need 20 people. Okay, what do you need? And all of a sudden you start figuring out that these two companies are both, lacking in truck drivers with CDL license. Okay, you're starting to see a trend here. Maybe you go to a third one and they go, I need a couple of drivers. And you go, okay, well, I got 3 important companies that are shorthanded, that need drivers, that need a CDL. So, okay, what can we do about that? Then you can begin to form a solution to the problem. But you wouldn't know that if you don't have that conversation. So dig deep when you start identifying your current job needs. And then start doing targeted marketing for those specific job needs. Say you have these companies now and you go, okay, well, we need receptionists and we need truck drivers. This is what we've learned through our conversations. Then start marketing for those things. Companies usually, unless they're a national corporate company, they're very dependent they're very dependent upon word of mouth and local assistance. Getting the word out, local paper, maybe Facebook or whatever. But if you are beginning to see that, we're not going to be able to fill all these locally. We don't, have the people, we don't have the skills. That's when you can start doing targeted marketing out into that commuting area. Start advertising in other places, other job sites, putting word out beyond your borders. Hard to do that when you only have one company, unless they have a big gap and need a lot of needs. But when all of a sudden you see, this is just a shortage that our community has. Why don't we have more truck drivers with CDLs? And then you start asking people and they go, well, I wish I could get my CDL. I would drive a bus for the school if I could. But I don't want to drive all the way to Austin to get it, or I can't do classes. Well, then maybe all of a sudden the Workforce Center can go, you know what, you may still have to go take your test there, but we can offer the classes here. Because all of a sudden now you can make a class. It's not going to be for 1 or 2. It's going to be for 20. So, okay, y'all see how my mind works here?
I
Okay.
didn't know if you knew this, Lorie, but from the Department of Labor for this particular grant, you have to train 120 CDL drivers through the workforce. I mean, that's mandated, but we've already got the employment commitment letters from those employers. We already know where these kids are going.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know that, and I use that as an example.
Yeah, and so same thing, I just talked to Jacob Blunt yesterday. I go, how many nurses out of the 9 nursing homes right now? He goes, I need 30 right now. I have a commitment letter for him for 25, but he needs night shift, day shift, right? So we know nursing is totally a critical area.
Yeah.
And then we just found out the security guards are really, which can do a prevailing wage. They are so hurting for security guards in Bastrop, Lee, and Fayette County. So if we start training security guards, we can fill that, like, quick.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just giving you.
I know, no,
finding out.
let's take that a step further. Knowing that you need nurses, security guards, CDL, welders, okay.
Plumbers.
So that is fairly universal. So what can you, already you're doing it by having the Workforce Center.
Right.
Because my question would be, okay, You've identified that, now what are you going to do
We're
about
training.
it? You're gonna be proactive about
Right.
training them.
Right.
And if I'm looking for a job in that industry, and I'm going, okay, I can go here, I can go outside of Houston, I can go to Central Texas, they have the same needs,
They do, yeah.
but I can't get trained there.
Correct.
You know, so, but, you know, we gotta tell that, you gotta get that word out.
Well, we have no
But
problem
that-
filling a CDL class.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we're
Yeah.
coming in, right?
That's
You
awesome.
gotta slow down. 'Cause it's very
that's
complex.
awesome. Okay, creating a pipeline to support the existing needs, that would be starting that pipeline early. One of the most exciting things that I've seen in the last few years are, instead of just having signing days in high school for kids that are going to go to a university, to a college or university, now they're starting to have signing days for kids who are going to work for companies.
Yeah.
And companies are coming in and going, we're so excited, blah, 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 is coming to work for us, and it's just as big a deal. And I've always wanted that to be a big deal, and we, you know, tried to incorporate that everywhere we go. But, you know, let's face it, a lot of smart kids, they're not interested in going to college, they're not interested in that degree program. They want to get to work, they may be entrepreneurs, they may already have skills, and if you can start identifying them in that mid-high school range, where you tell that, you know, you identify those kids and you go, you know what? If you work here in the summer times and you get so many hours, and maybe your senior year you start getting certifications, and they're getting out of school and then they're walking into a job that is career making.
So that's
And
that's
instead of
what-
waiting till they're 25, at 18, they're starting to make real money and walking into a job already with skills. And now there's always going to be flux in our career paths where we change, things happen, we have to learn different things all through our life. I mean, I'm in a class right now. I do like to continue to learn, but I'm in a class right now, it's killing me. And, but I wish I would have started earlier doing things, and I probably would have done things different through college if I would have had more advice and more guidance.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would have taken a different path. But, I mean, it is what it is, but I think, let's not wait till, you know, these kids are already smart, and we already need them. That's the point, we need them. And companies will hire them if they're coming out of school with either on their way to a certification, maybe an internship, maybe and some of those skills through school. They're gonna give them a chance because they need the workers, so.
I will say this, the workforce for plumbers, air conditioning techs, electricians and all that, the median age for most of the people that are trained right now are in their mid to late 50s. It used to be in the 40s.
Yeah.
But they're all like me, they're gonna be out of the workforce. And right now, the state plumbing board cannot even get to testing people because they don't have the room to test them. People are on a 4 to 6 month wait to get tested. So that is a problem. They're revamping the plumbing board because they're putting centers all
Yeah.
over Texas to do that. But it's been a problem. I mean, I've been to the state capitol many times.
I'm sure it's the same way with electricians.
It is,
isn't
it is. Well, they're under two different things because
Right.
TDLR runs
But
electricians.
both in demand.
Yes, oh,
Both in
absolutely.
demand with an aging workforce.
Yes, HVAC, electricians, anybody that works in a trade, most of them are
Right.
elderly.
So I was gonna say at the
I don't know how else to say it.
That's us.
That's us.
At the Bastrop High School career, okay, Tesla was there, they were interviewing, they were giving bonuses that day to the seniors that signed up with Tesla. And every senior had, like, I gotta go for my interview, we had round tables there, and they all had tags, and anyone interested in Tesla, they interviewed over 100 kids that day at that career fair, and they hired, I don't know how many they hired. These kids were all fired up, I'm going to work for Tesla, you know.
You know, you said something about you couldn't find a place for the kids that
No,
and stuff.
yeah.
Have you watched how Tesla works?
Yes.
Everybody that controls the machines they have, it looks like a gaming console. It's the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, that's crazy. Creating a pipeline to support potential needs would be, we already talked about that when we said, you know, you create these clusters, you already know you need drivers, you need nurses, all of those things, is creating that pipeline. You may not have the job yet, but you're going to. So, and creating a healthy business environment, and that means having resources available when somebody wants to start a business, having a pretty easy process to go through for permitting, fees, registration, you know, kind of a one-stop shop where if somebody, you know, say somebody wanted to put in a machine shop, where do they go? Where do they start? If you had a way to say, okay, not only are you going to introduce them to the SBDC and let them start going through that process, but you could also say, this is the person at the city that can help you with this. This is the, you know, these are the regulations for parking, for water, for blah, 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 blah. Or it could all be on your website, which I think you probably have a lot of that on the website already, but just creating, you would be surprised how many people don't. And then it becomes a barrier, and then it's prohibitive. You're in a community that's prohibitive for creating small businesses. And talking about the kids again, developing these entrepreneur programs for kids in school. In fact, one of my clients just this week had their big summer kids camp for entrepreneurs. And these kids are putting out amazing products. And they have to do a business plan at the beginning of the week, and they have to do marketing, and they're doing all this digital design and logos and this and that. And then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, then they have it's kind of like almost like, I want to say a flea market. It feels like a farmer's market, kind of. But because everybody, there's a tent, the tables are set up, and they are advertising their business and they're selling products. These kids are amazing. Amazing. Are y'all doing that already? Oh gosh, I got to get
We've
that
got a
for you.
farmer's market.
You do. Listen, these kids, and a lot of them are partnering, and they're having to do partner agreements. I mean, they're learning so much. They have to pay taxes, they have to get loans, they have to do all of this stuff ahead of time that will culminate in this weekend of them putting their product out there. And of course, the community supports them like crazy, and they're buying even the stuff that probably isn't that great. But I would say out of the 12 they had 25 companies. I only had time to really look closely at 12 of them, but out of those 12, I would have bought 9 of those 12 products.
It's like going before the Shark Tank, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, they weren't having to do pitches,
Yeah.
which that's a whole different fun thing to do. They were actually having, and I think it was very supported by the banks and the school. You know, it was very much probably less flashy on the selling and a lot more on the learning to do the business. Yeah, because kids are like, taxes, what I have to pay, you know, what's, taxes, insurance, what's that? Yeah. So they had to do all of that. And, but this one little set of 2 girls, they were making soaps and candles, and their design work, you know, was just really clever. The name of their company was clever. They're about to go to college, but they're going to continue their business. It was a huge success. And so this is probably going to help them fund their college education. They're both going into marketing, as well they should. But just like my daughter was, she had a snow cone stand for 5 years, and she's about to help kids where she lives now. She's going to be the investor, oh my God, in a snow cone stand up there, but just because she knows how to do it, she was successful at it, and that's how these kids will become great small business or large business owners eventually. And catch them when they're young and smart and enthusiastic, and they all think they can do better than us.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's let them.
Done any clothing?
Let's let them. Okay, so here's a few resources. Oh, good. And then I'm going to give you an update, what Steph and then Janice can add to it. Oh, did you have a thought?
Did you want to say?
Yeah, I do that.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, these programs are all wonderful and everything else. I'm very supportive of it, and I've been involved with the Small Business Administration and numerous other organizations. Basically, I'm a civic activist.
Right.
That's what I do. But locally, we have a severe problem in Austin. It's called residential affordability.
Right.
Now, they made a 2-page or 3-page Austin Statesman articles on it. They're starting to put the articles in there. But what's happened is people can buy a house, they can barely afford utilities, they can pay the taxes maybe, and maintenance. They have no money for groceries.
Right.
I'm serious.
No, yes.
And this is a serious issue.
Mm-hmm.
Something that needs to be brought up, that whenever we have people graduating all these programs, that there's an affordability to survive. And I appreciate all your efforts and everything else. It's working. And you're doing a great service. But we have to make sure that these people can continue in life.
Exactly. And we also are seeing the trend slow down of the exodus of kids when they get out of school. For 30 or 40 years, kids were graduating and leaving. And they may be just going to the next larger city, or they may be going away.
Yeah.
But now, I don't know, I have not been able to find, because I've been curious about this for a while, but the percentage of students that are just pie-eyeing out of here the day after graduation is slowing. And that number is a little bit small. There's still a big number that leaves, but that number is more of them are coming back. And some of them say, I'm leaving to work, but they wouldn't leave if they could stay, if they could make a living where they were at. They don't want to leave their families. They love their town, but they go, I gotta go where I can make a living.
Right.
And so, which is the underlying premise of why economic development is so important, is so that you can continue to create good jobs so that people can stay and that your kids can stay or they can come back. I'm all for people experiencing the world, but I'm also, recognize, especially COVID opened a lot of people's eyes to, maybe I don't want to live 10 states away from my parents. Maybe I want my kids to know their grandparents. Maybe, I think a lot of that just kind of came to the surface probably. But they can't stay if we don't have jobs for them.
With the prevailing wage, so that they can
With
pay
the
their
prevailing
rent and
wage.
do everything that he's saying.
But they also, maybe they may not make what they would make in Austin, but the difference in the, and not just the quality of life, but the cost of living. That's something that also should be taught in high school, is the formula for cost of living. Is, well, you can make this here, but it's gonna cost you this much to live there. So you're only gonna have this much left, but you can live here and work here. Maybe you make a few $1,000s less, or $5,000 or $10,000 less, but your housing cost, your whole cost of living is going to be less here. You get more house, you get more, but like I said, that's something that we can talk about in here, but doesn't do us any good if we don't start telling that story to the people that need to hear it.
We're encouraging the high schools to teach financial management.
They teach life skills.
Yes,
Teaching
some
the
life
balance of
skills.
checkbook would be nice.
They don't even use checkbooks.
I know they don't.
They don't. Heaven forbid if the debit card system ever goes south, right?
I know.
So you have a huge competitive advantage by having the Workforce Training Center here already. So I just want to shout that to the world. The regional workforce boards are generally the ones that federal funds are funneled through. So I'm sure you have a good relationship with them because the funds are getting funneled to you, but that's where a lot of the workforce, the Texas Workforce Commission, they have these couple of programs. Now, I've used the Skills Development Fund a lot. The Upskill Texas program is fairly new. I know that you all work with all of these, Janice.
There's like 9 of them. I mean, it's crazy. All these are different funding streams.
Right. The apprentice program is fairly new. The internship program they made a huge deal about this year. And then the hireability and HR programs, I love that they have added this for companies to learn more about how to hire, how to fire, how to, especially companies that aren't large enough for an HR department. Maybe just the couple of people that own the business need to know all of those things that an HR person would normally know. And so now they're providing these programs to help companies, to help all of Texas just have stronger companies, more sustainable and more solvent companies, and then all of our educational partners as well.
There are different situations. Like for instance, today we had a meeting with Arcadia for EMT, right?
Mm-hmm.
EMTs is very challenging to hire an EMT, or even get someone to go to class. For instance, an EMT after class makes $15 an hour. That's not sustainable to have a living.
Yeah.
So even though, you can go to Buc-ee's and make $19 an hour. You go to Chick-fil-A and make $17 an hour. So how do you get someone excited to go into that area of expertise or the workforce and have to go to school and then get paid something that he won't be able to live on? It's just not sustainable. And then, so how do you do that? Well, the way to do it, Arcadia is doing something interesting. What they're doing is they're hiring them, paying them to go to school, to do ECA, and but they're paying them $13 an hour. And then after that, they finish ECA, then they go to EMT class. They're still employed, but then they go to school. And after they finish EMT, they get it bumped to $15.50 an hour. And then they can go to advanced EMT or paramedic and still getting paid as an employee. And then go to school again, and then they get bumped. But then from the beginning to the end, 3 or 4 years, then they're gonna make $65,000 a year, 4 years later. So you can make $65,000 working in Buc-ee's. so those are the things that
It's a challenge.
we have to figure it out.
And do you feel like that's a local issue, or is that's
No,
issue
that's
all
nationwide.
nationwide?
It's the same thing with CNAs.
Oh.
Basic medical positions is a big issue to retain people in those areas because we just don't pay enough.
Right,
Which is crazy because
Yes.
they're taking care of people.
Right, and we need them.
right.
That has to do all with the
Nationwide.
healthcare system of how I'm sorry, but how the top people make millions and then they do not want money to trickle
Right.
Down
down.
to the bottom.
And it's not a good way to run
know,
the
It's like
system.
school teachers.
It's too, yeah.
I know, I didn't mean to get off on that, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just wondering too, if there's a way
Well,
to pull in resources from somewhere else to incentivize that, they're gonna get paid 15, so you get $5 or $7 from somewhere else to help
Right.
supplement that. That would at least make it different for your community and make it easier for your community to attract those things.
Right.
It's almost like we can't, okay, this is a problem in the whole country. Instead of saying we can't do anything about it, let's figure out a way. We
Well-
can't fix the whole system, but maybe we can fix it right here.
They
Yeah.
did in Texas, it was called Senate Bill 8, which
Right.
now will help pay for those students to go to school, which
Right.
is great. But then there's so many red tape along
I
the
know.
way.
Yes.
I know.
So
Oh,
they
and
did
tell
pass
you,
a bill.
Yeah, like we had with our situation with one of the classes with EMT, they were using instead of a Bill 8, and it took so long, then people lose interest. You're gonna have to go through all this red tape,
Yeah.
and so that's also the challenge.
it's
Now-
almost, I work in a community that they never adequately funded their fire department, and they had the same problem getting firemen. It was just a constant issue, and it almost took 5 years of losing some pretty important buildings because they didn't have enough firemen before they finally made it a priority.
Right.
But you never want the bad things to happen for it to become a priority. So It's like, let's find a solution to it before it gets so bad that we don't have any EMTs and we don't have any paramedics and, but it does break my heart that if we need security and we need health care. You know, that's when we pick up the phone and call 911, we want an ambulance or we want a policeman. I want somebody to be on the other end.
And that's one thing in our town is we're having a hard time getting policemen because we're at the bottom of the pay scale for them, and they can go elsewhere and get a job. They don't need to come here.
But you know what our police chief has done, which I think is really good,
He's moving in.
is he's selling quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
He's attracting those policemen that they've done their tour in a big city. They're tired of, you know, they want a little more relaxed atmosphere. They want, they're ready to enjoy their grandchildren on their off time.
That's an example of somebody taking your story and taking it out to the world, you know, being very targeted with it.
So we've got, you know, an older police force, but they're mature, they know what they're doing, and they're happy. They're at a point in their life where they're happy to be in this kind of
but
environment.
we're still short right now.
We're
So,
still
and
short.
we're hoping we can.
Yeah, but then that brings to what you mentioned before, that we have an elderly group, and they're gonna retire soon. So what are we doing to build up a new generation to take over those things that they can afford to live in this community? Because the people that have been here for a long time, they bought the house a quarter of a price that you buy a house in Pittsfield nowadays. I mean, you literally pay Austin money for a house here. I can't even live in town. I live outside of town. You know, so
It's all relative, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, yeah, you know, I can sell all this, but then I can't even have my own place.
So, you still have more slides for us?
No,
We're good, okay.
No, we're good. I did want to close with, and I want Jess to follow up on this. This is what Steph sent me as an update to the Good Jobs Challenge project. She said that it has officially expanded to Caldwell County.
Yes.
Employer outreach and city official connections have begun. Awesome. SWTC is streaming its processes of data collection and tracking. Awesome. Exploring additional education providers and utilizing community and county partners to boost the success in job placement goals. So, great job.
But there's still challenges with it.
There is.
It's okay.
So, obviously, we can't solve all the problems of the world in 1 hour tonight. But I hope I've given you some things to think about and stressed a couple of things that I really believe in across all the topics, and that is that you got to take care of your existing businesses, and you have a great story to tell. We got to start getting those things out. You have far more than most communities your size of good things to talk about. But you do not, the worst marketing concept in the entire world is when somebody says, we're a best kept secret.
You don't want to be a best kept secret.
You don't want to be a best kept secret. Not when you, and sadly, I mean, a lot of communities say, we don't want to grow, we like this, we want to be this, we don't want to be them.
Right.
That's okay, but you have to factor in attrition. You do have to factor in attrition, or you will lose population if you're not doing something to feed the pipeline. You just through national attrition, people retiring, people dying, people moving, you will begin to lose population if you're not feeding it somehow. And so I think part of the comprehensive plan will be to talk, to kind of figure out directional growth that you guys want to take so that it's not just organic growth. We already talked about you are experiencing organic growth, and that's growth that happens through nothing that y'all are doing at all. This whole region is experiencing organic growth. Directional growth is when you can begin to put things in place to help direct that growth to a place that you all collectively agree that this would be a good thing for our community. And identifying those priorities that you would like to focus on, especially for workforce. Some of those jobs and the teachers and the medical field and all of these things that are right there on the surface. That's kind of easy pickings.
Yeah.
We've got an opportunity to educate the community there. It's not just getting the word out outside of Smithville. but there's a good percentage of the population who are anti-growth, but don't
Right.
understand the attrition piece of it.
Yeah.
And it's an education thing.
Well,
To me,
you-
the boys,
you all-
it's a hot topic
Y'all
sometimes.
gave a perfect example of it tonight. I didn't even have to give it. Y'all gave it when you talked about the barbecue place that closed just because they retired. And then nobody else, you know,
Somebody else can live in there.
yeah, that.
Yeah, education gotta be key because, you know, a lot of people don't understand the process. If we don't educate our community, what happens eventually, that group of people will pass and then all of a sudden we have a complete change of regime. I mean, then we truly lose our city.
Right.
Because people take over.
They're denying that they're gonna pass right
Right,
now.
right, yeah, and that's something that needs to be part of the education process, to educate our
Can you
community.
educate them?
Part of what we learned
Do
on
you
the
want
campaign trail.
Smithfield to continue to be Smithfield for 100 years? It could happen, it may look different, but we need to start somewhere, educating them, and that way they understand. It's part of the process of development, and then we have different generations that do things different. It's not gonna be different, other than just being a different way of doing business, and that's part of the education process.
I like the directional growth thing. I think that should be our theme for the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, well, it will have to be because we want to keep our small
Because all these
cities, you know.
things, you know, it's chicken and an egg. You can't do housing without a workforce. You
Right.
can't have a workforce without housing. You can't,
Yeah, you gotta be doing it
you
all
know, you gotta be working on all of it.
You know, you said something earlier about, talked about from like the early 90s and when you started and the way things changed. Well, I turned out in the 70s as a plumber. And as an apprentice, I could work in Wichita Falls where I grew up. But when I turned out as a journeyman, there were no jobs. So I had to get a travel card as a union plumber and I had to go on the road. I could work in Texas for about 4 years. After that, I had to go up and down the East Coast and follow the jobs that were building up there from power plants to whatever. And that's how I had to work. And then, like you say, in the early 90s, I could come back and get a job in Texas.
Yeah.
But my wife, she saw me maybe once every 3 weeks because I was on the road. She was a nurse and she lived in Texas and I was gone on the road. And that's just how it was back then.
I've been married 32 years, and that's the secret to my marriage. Wait, I'm kidding. Not really.
You're really not kidding.
I'm really not kidding. Thank you all again for giving us your time. Sorry we went over a little bit, but this is an important topic. When you guys start doing your planning, be sure and keep asking those questions in your mind about, okay, if we do this, what is it a step towards? Or is this what we do, is what we're doing going to get us to our end game, which is sustainability and economic prosperity for everybody. That should be your end game. You don't have to grow, you don't have to grow big.
Can I throw something out?
Economic development can be just staying the same and being fabulous. But there's going to be that little revolving door that you want to always kind of be taken care of.
I just want to give the folks in this room, okay, something that Joanna knows, we've been talking about this, Jill's been talking about this, but we have this beautiful campus that's out in Busher State Park. So Texas Workforce Commission came with us on a field trip last week. Tom Edwards came and went to the Texas Tech Center in Hutto. Something this guy, he's worked for Texas Workforce Commission for 25 years, he said, you've got a gold mine. He said, you got this 36-acre beautiful campus, Robert Andretti.
Oh, yeah, I know
And
Robert
he said,
as
you
well.
got this beautiful campus.
Yes.
Focus on what your real need, which is, we know it's health, in the area of healthcare. He said, put yourself a healthcare campus that teaches all the trades of the healthcare out there in the park. I'm just giving you this thought, it's just an idea. And so he wants to come back, he wants to look at this center, but he said University of Houston wants to grow. Now, okay, Houston's way over there, but they would love to have a campus that taught the healthcare trades. EMT, paramedic, pharmacy tech, all those allied health trades out in one central location. And it used to be an MD Anderson Medical Center. So, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there because it's just an idea. But he's the one that came up with that, and it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea.
And Janice, that's also a very good example of when we talk about why these relationships are so important. The fact that you have invited him here,
Yes.
and you know him, if you would have never had that conversation, you would not have even known that University of Houston was thinking about doing that.
Right.
So you put yourself, maybe not on the map yet, I would follow up with that big time, but that,
Yeah, I mean, I know, I don't.
and so
wanna
that's the
do this
beginning of the
thing.
conversation. At least you're in the conversation.
She's looking at me like, oh, God.
Is he still coming out
Let
Thursday?
me tell you a personal accomplishment.
He's gonna call me tomorrow.
It's about University of Houston. That's my alma
Well,
mater.
there you go.
Aw.
But when I was elected to the student body, and with the first year or so, we had a wonderful president. He came and spoke to us and asked us if we would help him get the University of Houston to become a state school. It was a private school. Tuition was $15 an hour at that time. So, I was a parliamentarian, and unbeknownst to me, I controlled the money of the student body, you know, the student government body.
Mhm.
And after his speech, we asked everybody if they were interested, and we recruited all the students, we sent them to Austin, and they did our lobbying.
To become a
We
state
funded
school.
them, we gave them checks as they were leaving, gave them checks when they came back. Spent all the student government money, but
On gas.
in 2 years, the state legislature made it to
There you
state.
go.
So I was involved in the process.
Very best lobbyists, those are the very best ambassadors, are the
They were.
people that are
They were.
directly affected.
All the representatives says, well, how do you tell a kid who's going to school paying $15 an hour to attend school when they go to University of Texas and get a tuition of $100 a semester for 18 hours? And so
That's a good story.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
that was
Aw.
kind of fun, but I just.
Thank you. It was great.
You were funding beer and gas and,